What's up, everybody? It's Scotty here with Flat Track Flashback, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about after the Springfield Mile. We had history, we had heartbreak, we had redemptions, comebacks, frustrations, so many things crammed into that Labor Day weekend there at the Illinois State Fairgrounds. It's our granddaddy of them all, our Daytona 500, our Knoxville Nationals, our Super Bowl, whatever analogy, whatever comparison you want to make. Springfield is that place that pretty much every rider wants to cross off their list of places they can say they've won at, and we saw two new winners or at least two new Springfield winners in the Twins class. And some history made over on the singles side. The biggest talking points have probably come out of the SuperTwins class. No surprise there. We have more drama on the flat track scene this year. The month of August has given us plenty of it. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the Twins class, and I'm going to do the best I can to try to cover all the hecticness that's not a word, but whatever. All the chaos that took place there in Springfield, Illinois over the weekend. So we had a lot of returning faces, a lot of moves on site for this weekend, a lot of cool things to talk about going into the weekend. First off, there was the Jared Mees on the entry list with the Howerton Motorsports backing, which was kind of shocking. Like, Mees had teased that he might race Springfield, but to see him teamed up with the Howerton team was an interesting little tidbit after all the epic rivalry that they had with the Rogers Racing, Harley Davidson, and Jared teamed up against Brian Smith and that Howerton Kawasaki from about 2013 through 2016, and the championship duels that were going on between those two. And Jared, he went out there, signed up, practiced qualifying, was turning laps on that bike, and then unfortunately at the end of qualifying one, they ran into some mechanical woes, and that pretty much cut Jared's day short, although he did set a time fast enough that he would have qualified into the Triple Challenge events that day. But unfortunately, bike troubles, and I don't know, maybe it's one more headache for Jared to cause the Howerton team, as if he didn't give them enough stress when they were fighting for championships, and now they got to work on a bike. But Jared would later in the day do some tire testing and just would not be able to compete there in the Triple Challenge event, which is a little bit of a bummer. But riders who were returning that did make a full weekend of racing were Brandon Price with, he got help from Nick Henderson with that effort. And it was cool to see Brandon Price back out there, and he would deliver in a big way. Additionally, Jeffrey Carver back in action, and boy, was he a crowd favorite. Every time that we had to hear from the Wizard, the crowd was loving it. That place so special for Jeffrey, picking up a victory there in 2018 aboard the Indian, where he was just so dominant. And Carver, being from Illinois, being away from professional racing for so long, so awesome to see him back out there on those Kawasaki's and looking fast. Although he did have a moment where he nearly wiped out half of our Twins field, slamming into the wall during a practice and qualifying session. Some scary moments, but some triumphs for Jeffrey as well, and we'll get into that. We saw a shakeup in the first impressions pit. Henry Wiles taking over that KTM ride, and Henry looking pretty stout throughout the weekend on that bike. He put in a great effort, especially on Sunday. And the KTMs caused some people some trouble, but they, at least somewhat finished strong. By all things considered, with what we've had to see from the KTMs on miles this year. But the Triple Challenge gave us quite a story in its own right on Saturday. Briar Bauman, a lot of issues earlier in the day, only got one lap in the first practice and the first qualifying. He was able to get a little bit more track time during the second qualifying session, but still missed that top 12 cutoff, along with Davis Fisher, Jared Vanderkoy, and Max Whale, riders in the top 5, top 10 in points, who were going to have to go through that last chance qualifier just to get into the Triple Challenge races. And in that LCS, Briar was able to be victorious. Max would come with him. It looked like Davis and Vanderkoy would be joining those two in the Triple Challenge, lock-in spots. But on the last lap, Vanderkoy's bike went first. Fisher's was close behind, and that opened the door for Michael Inderbitzen and Nick Armstrong to join the party and qualify for the Triple Challenge race. Vanderkoy having to he and that fast track team having to Frankenstein a motor together out of various parts just to get ready for Sunday. Fisher would take a provisional to get into the Triple Challenge, but then in the first main event for the Triple Challenge, that bike goes up in smoke like Cheech and Chong, and I know that's the oldest joke in the book, but I'll use it anyway. Not the first time we would see bikes smoking on the weekend, and that became quite a topic. But Fisher, uses a provisional, but unfortunately that bike goes away in the first main event and gets red flagged, and then we get off and running for real. So the first main event, guys that were just up in the mix that, shaking up this title fight. You had James Ott, Trent Lowe, Jeffrey Carver all looking really fast. We mentioned Brandon Price was up there looking fast. Declan Bender was making his presence known. Briar, after rough start to the day, gets up into that fight for the lead along with Dallas Daniels and Brandon Robinson. And that collective was really sort of our front runners on a consistent basis for every one of the events throughout the weekend. We would see a couple other riders factor in later on Sunday. We'll get to that as well. But that first Triple Challenge race, James Ott comes out victorious. He, Trent, and Carver on the podium. Daniels back and forth. Breyer able to get a 7th place finish on that first main event. And with these Triple Challenge, the 10 lap, 15, 20 lap, and then the points increasing after each race. The first main event, not the be all end all, but it could have been a real trendsetter for the rest of the day. And then as we moved into the second main event, Breyer's able to put that Harley toward the front. Dallas Daniels had a bit of a mistake in turn 4, ended up getting shuffled kind of back to a second group there. And then midway through the race, I'm kind of scattered. I'm just trying to remember everything here and like glance at these notes and whatnot, not wearing my glasses. Can't see that great. But midway through that second race, you had sort of 2 groups of 4. You had James Ott, Jeffrey Carver, Trent Lowe, Brandon Price in one group, Dallas Daniels, Breyer Bauman, Brandon Robinson, Declan Bender, sort of a second group. Until about midway, there was a moment where that second group was reeling in the leaders, and James Ott had a little bit of a wobble, got out of shape, sort of drifted wide, made contact with Jeffrey Carver. I'm very lucky that they didn't go down. Carver goes way wide into 1 and 2. That second group sort of comes together, and we've got this big pack coming to the end of the race, and it would be Trent Lowe who gets around Breyer Bauman, gets to the front, and wins that second Triple Challenge race. And Trent setting himself up fantastic for a potential overall victory in his first Twins victory on that Honda. The Honda looking so good. He and Carver had amazing corner speed all throughout the weekend, and also seemed like they could kind of keep the Yamahas honest on the straightaways, whereas the Harleys just looked like they brought a knife to an AR-15 fight. Trent, he's sitting atop of the charts there in the overall. Breyer with that second place effort in the second main event is tied with James Ott for second in the overall points. And then you look back, and Dallas Daniels, after having to settle for a 7th place finish in that second main event, was in quite a hole coming into the finale of the Triple Challenge and was 29 points back of the overall lead there. He was tied with Brandon Robinson and Jeffrey Carver. So as we come into this final race on Saturday, it looks like Trent Lowe's in the catbird seat, and he's up front early, looking stout in this final main event. Our usual players back up in the mix there, fighting it out for this Triple Challenge. But unfortunately, heartbreak meets the Honda team as Trent Lowe throws a chain, and man, I feel like we've had more lost chains than a jeweler with bad security this year, between especially the last couple of weeks with what Cody had and now this. Just heartbreak for Trent Lowe and that Honda team. And that bike has just made so many strides, but just Saturday would not be their day. And that just blew everything wide open, because now you've got the Yamahas of Daniels, Bender, Price, and Ott are back in the mix. The Harleys of Robinson and Bauman are back up in the mix for the overall. Carver on the Kawasaki, could he pull off the upset there? Dallas Daniels, after looking a little off the first couple of main events, he gets to the front. He and Declan Bender looking really strong in this last race. Those 7 riders would become 5 toward the end of the race, with Robinson and Carver starting to drop off of that lead group. It'd be Breyer versus the Blue Crew. Dallas Daniels in a spot where if he wins the race and Breyer Bauman's second, Breyer's able to take the overall. But as we're coming to the white flag, Brandon Price makes a move up the inside of Breyer, kind of slides him coming up on the front straightaway, and saps the momentum of the Harley. And Daniels in a really good spot on this last lap. He's able to hold on to the lead and gets the victory. And for Breyer, this would be the opposite of Thanksgiving. Nobody's passing the yams on this particular encounter, and he ends up getting swallowed up by everybody. And Brandon Price comes home second that race. James Ott third. Declan Bender wobbling down the front straightaway into fourth. Breyer has to settle for 5th in that final Triple Challenge race, and that shuffled him from a possible overall victory back to 4th in the overall standings, which was a big points haul for Dallas Daniels on day 1. Dallas Daniels, let's look at where we stood at the end of race 2 versus where the points landed in race 3. We kind of touched on it earlier. Again, Trent Lowe with a solid advantage over Breyer Bauman and James Ott there. And then behind them, Brandon Price and Brandon Robinson, Jeffrey Carver, Dallas Daniels. So many shakeups with Trent Lowe having that mechanical that, cost him this overall. And then when you look at where we landed from the second race to the third, that final main event of these Triple Challenge, it's just insane how much it can shake things up. We saw Chase Sadoff be very take advantage of that, Bowden Sturgis for the short track race, and then here Dallas Daniels just comes from the trunk to the front and wins the Triple Challenge, gets his first Springfield Mile victory, and it meant, you could see how much it meant. Dallas is one of these guys who just has such an appreciation for the sport. And what makes this championship for Dallas and Breyer all that more sort of, I guess, makes me more invested in it, is that these guys want nothing more than to be a Twins champion in American flat track racing. That is their ultimate goal. Breyer's achieved the mountaintop. Dallas has had it ripped away from him. He's been so close a couple of occasions, and he's even closer now. Dallas's win at Springfield, you could see the emotion pouring out of him. He gave a shout out to Mike Wheeler and mentioned watching the Hall of Fame race that Will Davis won. And to see what it meant to Dallas there to get that victory, congrats to him and the essence and effort. And again, Brandon Price coming back with the HRP Yamahas, gets on the box there. James Ott with another podium. Strong run from the G&G bike. Although Ott had a little bit of smoke coming out of his bike toward the end of that last race. Fortunate for him that it did hold on and would not factor into costing him any further positions. But again, another bike smoking. And again, we are going to touch on bikes smoking when we flip to Sunday. So as the calendar turns to Sunday, our traditional national at Springfield, Sunday at Springfield, man, what we're all accustomed to throughout history. And on this day, the Yamahas would have storylines again. James Ott would go quick time, but there's another rider on a Yamaha making his SuperTwins debut, and that was Tom Drain. Drain getting his first start there on the Estenson Twin. And could this be a potential for what we'll see next year? I kind of figured regardless of what happened with Tom Drain in the singles class, he would still probably run one more year, and whether he was a champion or not, probably do one more year in the singles class before coming up to the Twins, but gets a chance to be out there on the Twin there at Springfield on the mile, and was looking pretty good earlier in the day. One rider who was struggling once again during practice and qualifying was Pryor Bauman. He was 9th overall in practice and qualifying, which was the second row start of a heat race. Now, Breyer's racecraft and talent, if on a mile especially, there's more time. And he would have, we figured he could have gotten up in the mix, but that first heat race did him no favors. James Ott, with the speed that he's had all day, lined up on that front row along with Dallas Daniels, Tom Drain, and Brandon Robinson. Then you had Breyer on the second row. This race would see Ott get out front with, ahead of Daniels, and Bauman kind of mixing it up there for second and third. Tom Drain with a rough start, but was able to sort of navigate his way forward. He would get between Dallas and Breyer later in this heat race, and then Dallas would be able to chase down James Ott and make the pass for the win late, putting he and Ott into the dash while relegating Breyer to a second row start in the main event. That second heat race would feature some of your potential weekend spoilers as well, with the likes of Trent Lowe and Jeffrey Carver, who showed so much speed on Saturday. We're looking good again on Sunday. You also had Brandon Price and Declan Bender mixed in with Davis Fisher and Henry Wiles trying to get something out of those KTMs. Fisher with a really good qualifying effort on Sunday. He was 4th overall on the time charts, and he had quite an eventful race here. It looked like Trent Lowe and Jeffrey Carver were going to be the top guys in this particular race, but Fisher got in there and was shaking it up with him. Fisher, though, on the last lap would go from 1st all the way back to 5th, and then nearly pass everybody back around the outside of turns 3 and 4 coming to the checkered flag. However, it would be Carver who was lined up behind Trent Lowe and was able to make the pass coming off of turn 4, drag racing to the line and get the victory there. Carver, much to the excitement of the crowd, wins that heat race and gets the victory over Trent Lowe. And talk about guys being out of line. There were several times throughout this entire weekend where riders were all over the racetrack, not really wanting to fall in line and play the drafting game. They were treating it almost like seeing guys come off of turn 4 and all these different lines. It looked more like Hagerstown in the 2010s than a Springfield Mile. We talked with Brandon Robinson on Tank Slapping Podcast recently, and mentioned how a lot of times the Springfield Mile isn't along the rails, and I guess the Springfield Mile is not on the rails, just like the cast of SNL is not on the rails as much anymore. And for anybody who gets that joke, I appreciate you. The track on Sunday did sort of have a little more toward the bottom. We weren't all over the track as much, but man, the getting lined up and trying to draft somebody seemed like a foreign concept for a lot of riders. And not just the singles class that we sort of just figure it's going to happen, but the twins class as well. Here in the LCQ that day with Jared Vanderkoy and the likes of Ben Lau and Logan McGrain and Cam Smith and all the riders who were in this LCQ, there were 7 of them all fighting for those 4 spots. They were scattered throughout it several times. Ben Lau actually on Logan McGrain's backup bike in this race, he gets the victory and is able to come through that last chance race. Vanderkoy and Logan McGrain had a tight moment coming down the front straightaway where Vanderkoy was trying to make a move to the inside and try to get a draft, but he was had Logan McGrain right there, and they were almost leaning on each other coming to the line, both of them okay and able to make the main event, joined by Cam Smith. Onto the dash on Sunday, Jeffrey Carver looking so good out front, and coming into 3 and 4 on the final lap, he's got a little bit of an edge. We've got James Ott, Dallas Daniels, Trent Lowe, 3 wide fighting for second. And while they're back there dicing it up, Carver's out front and comes home to pick up a mission challenge check. And congratulations to Jeffrey, the Illinois native, carrying all this momentum into the main event. Just like, what if Carver's able to pull this off and take home the victory on that Kawasaki? A lot of fans in the stands that day would have lost their mind. I would have loved that. As we move into the main event, your traditional main event, this race was nuts. A massive pack of riders up front, so many guys exchanging the lead. Carver, Daniels, and Bauman up front early on really seemed to be like they were going to be in the catbird seat and fighting for this victory, but you still had Trent Lowe, Declan Bender, Brandon Price, Brandon Robinson, Henry Wiles up there, Davis Fisher up there. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out. This race it had us on the edge of our seats for sure. Early on, around like the 4-minute mark of the race, it's some heartbreak for Carver as he's going into turn 3. The bike gives up on him and takes him out of contention for the win there, and that would not be the only dicey moment early in the race. James Ott would also, even before Carver's mishap, Ott had to throw his hand up and nearly collided with Brandon Robinson in 1 and 2, trying to get out of the way. Ott's bike lets him down on the second day. There would be no back-to-back podiums for the fast qualifier and that G&G team, so a real bummer for them. There was a moment between Trent Lowe and Declan Bender just a little bit before halfway, coming off of turn 4. Not quite as severe as I would say the sat-off drain incident from DuQuoin, but a very similar situation, just a racing incident. They kind of come together. Declan's able to save it and continue his fight, and Declan would definitely be a factor on these miles. It's so cool seeing him in that Yamaha just up front and fighting for these victories, and I feel like at some point during Declan's career, he's going to get a mile victory. With about 5 minutes left in this race, we still had a 9-rider pack up front, all under a blanket, all fighting for a win. Some riders looking for their first ever AFT victory. Some riders looking to get back on top of the box. Others looking to, help their championship chances. But this is where things would start falling apart again. Tom Drain's bike, he would have to pull over. He would be out of this race around this mark. And then Briar Bauman's bike would start smoking. Briar would end up being black flagged, and this was detrimental to him and his championships. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit once we get to the end of the race recap, but this was a major, major moment. Not just going to gloss over it and push it to the side. We will come back to that. But Drain now out of that front pack. Bauman now out of that front pack. And Dallas Daniels looking to be in prime position to nearly grasp the championship with both hands. But there were still other riders who were fighting to take that away from him. Trent Lowe on the Honda, Henry Wiles and Davis Fisher on the KTMs. Yes, the KTMs had not seized up at this juncture in the race. You still had the likes of Brandon Price up there in that front pack, Declan Bender up there in that front pack, joining Dallas Daniels. So Trent Lowe and the Honda, probably already said that, but these guys all coming down to the wire. And with a few laps to go, Trent was able to get under Dallas and kind of break away a little bit. And it looked like maybe Trent was going to be able to make a run for it, but Dallas reels him back in. Now, on the last lap, Dallas Daniels is leading briefly. Trent gets up underneath him going into 3 and 4, takes over the lead. Daniels with that essence and horsepower. Is he going to have enough to draft back past Trent coming down the front straightaway? Trent with the redemption and with a historic moment for him in that big R Super Twins Dallas Honda Turner Racing effort. An amazing feat for Trent to bounce back from the heartbreak of the day before and then to just be so strong all day long again on that Honda, to be able to have that short-term memory and just send it and make it happen. The first time a Honda's won on a twin in the premier class in American Flat Track since 1998. And this team has gone through a lot this year. Last year, they come on board with Morgan Mishler and Dan Bromley and are struggling throughout the year. This year, a one-rider effort with Trent Lowe, and they had a rough offseason with having to rebuild bikes and facing so many mechanicals and just really treading water through a lot of the season. But recently, Trent's really cranked it up, and boy, was he a factor all weekend long, looking so good. And congratulations to that team, just to all the hurdles that they've gone through in developing this bike over the past couple of years. And they got something with this Honda Transalp. And for Trent Lowe, the emotion pouring out of him. Trent and Dallas have been duking it out for victories since their amateur days, coming up together, writing several chapters in their storied rivalry, coming up through the ranks of Flat Track, and now getting to see another episode, another chapter of that, and this one in such iconic fashion. Both of these guys getting their first wins at Springfield on the weekend. And for Trent to get his first Premier Class victory in what is effectively his rookie season. He had that one start back in 2024 at Lake Ozark, but this full rookie season, what is a rookie anymore in Flat Track? How are we defining that? But it was mentioned that he's the first rookie to win in the Premier Class since Dallas, so some more parallels amongst their careers. But, dude, congratulations to Trent to be able to pull this off. And that whole pit area with that Honda team has been so hospitable and accommodating to us with Flat Track Flashback. It's like a second home for us every time we're going to the racetrack. And I'm not trying to just super glaze that pit area, but man, they deserve it. This is some of the nicest guys and some of the hardest working people. Not that other teams aren't, but we've got to see it firsthand because of how welcoming they have been to us and how much access they've allowed us into their paddock, and just the respect and the appreciation that I have for them is I can't put it into words. But really, really stoked to see Trent accomplish that feat there at Springfield, and got to be the first of I'm sure it's the first of many wins for that team and probably that platform as well. So congratulations to them, Trent. You're going to have a little bit of help with the wedding planning after picking up that victory. And Dallas Daniels able to come home second. Brandon Price double podium after having to sit out so many rounds. We weren't sure if we were ever going to see Brandon Price. Thought he retired, but came back with the Henderson bikes and put some right on the box both days there at Springfield. So congratulations to Brandon there. Great ride, additionally, from Declan Bender, another top 5 on the weekend. And Henry Wiles on that First Impressions KTM is able to get a top 5 on that bike. These KTMs have been a pain on Miles all season long. But Henry, man, in his first weekend with First Impressions Racing, does he potentially have a job lined up for next year? That's speculating. Let me not do that. But man, congratulations to Henry for getting a lot of that KTM. Brandon Robinson and Davis Fisher brought up the rest of the that leading pack there. And for Fisher to get a 7th place there at Springfield after all the issues they've had on half miles and miles this year, that's probably got to feel like a podium for him, as he still stays alive in that fight for 4th in the championship. Going to talk about the points here real quick, and then we'll get back to Smokey and the bandit, the theft of what could have been our championship at the end. With that heartbreak for Briar Bauman there at Springfield, Dallas Daniels now has one hand on the title. 13-point lead over Briar going into Lake Ozark. Briar's won at pretty much every track like this on the season, but Dallas just has to come home 7th, and he will be crowned the 2025 Progressive American Flat Track Mission Super Twins champion. I don't see that bike finishing off the podium. So it sucks for us to not really have a winner-take-all situation this year. We kind of didn't have it last year either, after Mies put the whooping on him at Springfield following his Sturgis TT DQ. I have to kind of imagine Briar is going to be the favorite to win Lake Ozark. They're going to do their job. They're going to have that bike ready to go. And it's just a matter of what happens behind him, I think, because I feel like they're going to be riding angry and coming out swinging there in Lake Ozark. But Bauman, he's still got a shot at it. Again, if crazier things have happened. And Dallas Daniels, unfortunately, knows that all too well. So that Essenson team has to make sure their T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and everything's working well, and ride a smart race down there in Ozark and just try to get there 7th or better. Dallas hasn't been outside the top 5. So, and that just goes to show you, like, when you're trying to win a championship against these guys now, you can't finish outside the top 5 unless you're going to win 10 races, it seems like. The battles that Mies and Daniels had a couple of years ago, that Dallas has got this like Ryan Dungey sort of just consistency and racecraft. He's so solid. He's such a smart rider, and he's there every single night. And it just, you can't sell it. You can't undersell it enough. I mean, he's an incredible talent. He's got a great backing, and he has put together an amazing season. You can't be mad at Dallas for what happened on Sunday. He's done his job, and he has put that bike where it needs to be and put himself where it needs to be. And he's been so strong all year, and he's just got one more round to do it. And it just is a heartbreaker for Briar, now 13 points back. Brandon Robinson has 3rd place locked up. Nobody's going to be able to take that from him. He's not going to be able to move forward. So a 3rd on the season for Brandon Robinson. Behind him, Trent Lowe with a strong weekend, falls into 4th place in points, 3 points ahead of Davis Fisher, 5 points ahead of Jared Vanderkoy, coming to tracks that with Lake Ozark is probably going to suit Fisher and Vanderkoy a little bit more. So that'll be a fun little mix-up for them to see who can come home 4th in the points. I don't think there's a whole lot of money or contingency up for grabs there, but yeah, bragging rights. And maybe one of them can be the 5th winner on the season and throw a whole spoiler at it. But still think Breyer's the favorite to win at Ozark. Behind them, you've got James Ott, Dan Bromley, Max Whale, and Declan Bender rounding out the top 10 of the Super Twins points. I've tried to record this, talk about this more times than I want to admit. It's kind of embarrassing how much I've tried to frame this in a way that makes sense. There's been several occasions here in this sport where there's been decisions made that have been very controversial and it's affected championships. Obviously, we're human. Mistakes are going to happen, and we just have to try to learn from them and implement things a little bit better. In 2014, you had the Brian Smith situation that got him DQ'd in his title fight with Jared Mees. In 2021, the situation with Trevor Bruner and Dallas Daniels that impacted the Dallas Daniels-Max Whale AFT Singles Championship. The Breyer Bauman Jared Mees coming together in 2022 at Cedar Lake, where Breyer gets put to the back, and now that's kind of like the standard. And in 2024, the Jared Mees disqualification that, Jared's able to come back from and win that championship. And now we've had 2 of the sport's most talented, most passionate riders who have been embroiled in this epic title fight all year long. And it's going to come down to a decision that I'm not sure. It's just, you never want to be in that spot. I've never been a racer. I've never been a race director. I was not at the track. I was a fan watching flow racing replays. So my opinion probably doesn't mean a whole lot. And that's fair. I respect that. Watching from home, it did not seem like a black flag should have come out in this particular instance with Breyer Bauman. None of the riders behind him were throwing their arms up or motioning to officials that I could see, indicating that there was an issue with Breyer's bike. Last year at Daytona Short Track, when Sammy Halbert's bike was smoking, there were riders who were visibly upset. I did not see oil going down on the track. I did not see oil on number plates or leathers. From what I have heard, when the bike was looked at after the race, nobody could find any oil on the bike. Obviously, hindsight's always 20/20. From a series standpoint, you're trying to play it safe. You don't want any fluid going down on the track. You don't want riders to hit it and crash and it become a big deal. You also don't want a bike to completely go up in smoke, and then that rider becomes at risk for himself and others. I understand the series is trying to look out for everybody, but in that particular situation, would it not have been better to maybe red flag the race? Sure, you disrupt it, but then you address the situation there. You can check out the track. You can see if there appears to be a problem. I think back to, I'm just going to pull a random example out, and that was 1991 at Hagerstown, and you can see oil going down on a racetrack from those broadcast cameras. You guys had the ability with the production truck, you can see this type of stuff. I would think, again, this is a little bit of speculation, so I'm sorry. But cannot be referenced in time? I mean, it just feels like what we've had is the best intentions and a shitty outcome. And I'm sorry for the language. I don't like to use it on this channel, but it is what it is. So you've had a rider who gets black flagged, who gets a race where he could have been fighting. Maybe Breyer would have won. Maybe he would have finished 5th. Maybe the bike would have let go. I don't know. I have no idea what would have happened. There's been these situations with riders where calls have been made over the past couple of years, and guys are getting frustrated with the series, and I don't know what the fix is. I don't like. What if our riders see stuff like this and experience things like this over and over again and just stop showing up? I mean, we're already seeing these fears arise about what's the future of the sport look like. There's so much talent through the amateur ranks, but what do they have to strive for if there's all this sort of uncertainty and and lack of faith in decisions being made. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass here. And again, feel free to call me out in the comments. Like I said, I'm not the most expert person to offer an opinion on this. I know that. I have a channel who talks about Flat Track Weekly, and so I'm just going to say what's on my mind. And again, I've tried to articulate this several times and gone back and just been like, I don't know. But now I'm just going to kind of just say how I feel. It sucks. Dallas is an amazing person. He's an amazing rider. He's great for not only the sport, but for this freaking planet. And same with Breyer. And they have been amazing people to me. I don't have a dog in this fight. If either one of them wins a championship, congratulations, hats off to them. They're more than deserving. And it's the part of this sport where, like, Taylor Fritz during the Breakpoint documentary on Netflix had the best quote. He's talking about tennis. Every tournament, there's only one winner. Everybody else is the loser. And while that's harsh, that's the fact. Every weekend at the track, there's only one winner. Every championship, there's only one winner, and everybody else is the loser. It sucks that now this situation is looming over our heads, and it just feels like over the past few years, like there's been so many moments of riders getting penalized for stuff and having unfortunate and potentially incorrect judgment calls made. Again, I get the series side. I do. I understand trying to make the right call for rider safety in that situation. It's always easier for us to armchair quarterback, for us to utilize hindsight to make assessments. We're not in the moment. There's not a single race director who takes that job and knows they're going to make everybody happy. They know they're probably going to be the most hated person on a week-to-week basis. There's drama like that in all of motorsports. And it's just so unfortunate for it to impact anybody. But especially in this particular situation with this championship that was going to come down to the wire. And it still does. Mathematically, I know it still does. Over on the singles side of things, well, Tom Drain came into this weekend with the opportunity to be the first non-American-born rider to win a championship in American Flat Track. And look, Tom won everything in the singles class. He was quick time. He's winning dashes. He's winning main events. He was challenged. He didn't just run away with it. He had to fend off the madness that is this singles class on a mile. And the first impressions, guys, were definitely a thorn in his side. Cage Tadman and Chad Coase were working together all weekend long. They were drafting with each other, helping each other with the times. I feel like that combo, having a pairing with Coase and Tadman, is a really great thing for Cage as a young rider coming up into the sport, having an experienced rider like Chad, also from California. I mean, these guys have battled at Lodi together. I'm sure they've got a rapport already, and that's a great combo for that team. And also, man, for the weekend, being under the same tent as Henry Wiles too. I mean, you've got some knowledge for Cage to build on there, and it was cool to see him after the struggles they had in DuQuoin to where he is now at Springfield. Granted, now on this first impression bikes, having the help with Andrew Butler and Ashley in that whole effort, Cage was looking really sporty. And look, just straight up, we might be looking at that number 228 as a champion next year. He has had the best rookie season for a rider in the singles class in a long, long time. He's got the victories. He's been fighting for podiums. He's Mr. Excitement. The dude hates to get passed, and that was so very relevant throughout the second and third Triple Challenge main events. On this day, we had so we'll go back to Saturday. Yeah, we'll go back to Saturday with the singles class. And real quick, shouts out to riders who were able to qualify through the last chance and make a national on the weekend. Ryder Reese, who is tucked in, getting low in a way that Lil Jon and the Ying Yang twins would appreciate. He was low on that bike, getting tucked into the draft. The rider's not a short kid either. Reese gets through in that last chance victory. He's able to get by Podorf. Skylar Sintel comes in third, and Jess Reynolds able to make a pass on Justin Anselmi on the last lap of that singles LCQ Saturday. Holds on by 7/1000ths of a second, 007, and Jess Reynolds qualifies for that main event. It's nice to see Jess back out of the track. She was a rider who was really strong in the amateur ranks for especially the last couple years that she was down there in the 450 and the open amateur classes. Unfortunately, just things outside of racing have really impacted her being able to get to the track more often, but she's a really strong mile rider, and it's cool to see her be able to qualify for this Triple Challenge main events. That first main event, Tom Drain Trevor Bruner, Chad Coase, Cage Chapman, Braden Fanders. They sort of staked their claim as they were going to be the dudes on this first day. Top 5, they checked out in this first main event. 6th through 15th was madness, absolute chaos back there. How they all survived that race is just, it's still mind-boggling to me because they were all over the place fighting for those spots. You would have thought that was the race for the win. Tom Drain, he actually led every single lap of this race. He was able to get out front. There's a lot of battling going on behind him. Trevor Bruner and Cage Chapman got into a little bit of a battle there for second coming off of turn 4. Neither of them able to get lined up and try to make a draft on Tom Drain, who's, I'm not sure they would have gotten by him anyway, between Tom's talent level and comfortability on the bike and the fact that that thing looks like it was built by NASA. They just got an unreal combo. And Tom on miles is just, I mean, you almost got to write him the check before they show up with how good he is on that type of racetrack. And there's some accomplishments that Tom has done, not just on miles, but throughout this year, and how good he is as a closer. We'll get to in a second. But Tom Drain gets the first main event. In the second main event, this is where the first impression guys really give him a run for their money. Cage and Tom were fighting back and forth in this second main event, just absolutely duking it out. They looked like they were going to check out and be mano a mano up front. Coase was able to sort of break away from this battle from about 3rd to 11th and leave them to sort of replicate what 6th through 15th were doing in the first main event. Coase able to actually catch back up to Tadman, and then it's 2-on-1. And the first impressions guys work together and get by Drain. Well, unfortunately, no. Coming to the white flag, Tadman was leading, took a look over his shoulder, and I think it kind of screwed up his momentum. Drain was able to blow by him and get into the lead. And then as we're coming around to take the checkered flag in that second main event, Cage ended up in sort of a battle with his visor and slipped wide. And Coase was able to get underneath him there for a second place finish in that second main event. Drain continuing that perfect weekend. Moving into main event number 3, it wouldn't be quite as easy. Again, it got more and more difficult for Tom throughout the day in these main events. He's able to take the lead early. Tadman's rolling around the outside of him though, and Drain gets back into the lead going into turn 4 on the first lap. And here we get Bruner joining the party. He's able to take the lead at certain points. This was sort of our biggest lead group of the day with Bruner, Tadman, Drain, Coase. You also have Fanders up there, Jared Lowe, Aiden Rusev, and Terrence Santero, all in that front pack. And Coase was able to sort of roll that second lane around the outside. And those Husqvarnas all weekend were able to sort of run that higher second lane and really make it work. There was a scary moment in this third main event, though. Going into turns 3 and 4, Braden Fanders gets underneath Cage Chapman. He's trying to make the pass on the inside. Tadman trying to keep the momentum around the high line. Fanders lays the bike down and crashes into the air fence pretty hard. But man, Fanders he's got to be the toughest dude on tour right now because bounces right up. He's hit the soil quite a few times and just continues to bounce back. And the race would get restarted. And within 2 laps, Fanders was from the tail all the way back up into the lead group, fighting for the victory again. On the final lap of this triple challenge race, with Drains, he's just got that essence in Yamaha with the legs, and nobody was able to make a draft pass on him. Tom Drain sweeps the day, sweeps the triple challenge, gets another win at Springfield, gets the championship. He's officially the first non-American born rider to win a professional American Flat Track Championship. Picks up his 17th singles win of his career, and just continues to add accolades to his already impressive resume. In that third main event, Trevor Bruner and Chad Coase bring home 2nd and 3rd, which would also reflect in the overall. Cage Chapman's 4th place finish and Braden Fanders' 5th place finish would also reflect in the overall. So congratulations to them on top 5s on the day there in Springfield. And we mentioned Drain being the first non-American born rider to win the championship. He's probably the first of potentially many. We'll see what younger brother Sam does throughout the rest of his racing career. We'll see what the Page brothers do in the rest of their racing career. There's several very talented young Australian riders who could still make a very big impact in American flat track racing if it's the route they choose. There's also several riders north of the border in Canada who are looking really impressive as they continue to grow through the amateur ranks here in flat track. On Sunday, Drain, we mentioned he rode the Super Twin as well, pulling double duty. And no problem at all. Drain goes quick time. He gets the better of Chad Coase in his heat race, although it was close between those two. But Drain gets the victory there. In the second heat race, we saw Cage Tadman and Trevor Bruner duking it out up toward the front. And Tadman able to get the better of Bruner just barely in that race. Tadman was at war with a bunch of Hondas there, not just Bruner. He also had, Santero and Walker Porter and Jared Lowe all fighting with him. Caleb Martin was in that mix as well for a little bit. And that reminds me, I've talked about it on Tank Slapping. I'm hoping next year the streaming setup that they have there for the flat track races for Flow will have double boxes, because they cut to a report with Kristen, which was a fun little report showing one of Bruner's fans having the big facial cut out of him. But when you cut away for that, you cut away for replays, you've got all this great racing going on. We're missing it. We need to find some way for them to design and implement double boxes for that particular instance, because I want to hear Kristen's report. I want to see this stuff. I want to see replays, but I don't want it to sacrifice the amazing racing that we're seeing on track. Sunday singles LCQ, we had 9 riders going for 4 spots. We had them 4 and 5 wide at times. Very nerve-wracking. Again, everybody wants to be in first place at all times. Strategy out the window. I'm getting to the front. I don't care how. Several of these riders in this particular pack were looking for their first main event of their career. The likes of Caleb Martin, who had an opportunity in his heat race before the mistake. Trevor Martin, who we thought was going to be a bigger factor in the limelight, just had a rough weekend there. Trevor actually would get the victory in this last chance race. So good on Trevor, who's got a lot of speed. So fun to see him finally get there in a main event. He's run very limited rounds this year, but cool to see Trevor. He's got his first main event. Additionally, Reese Podorf gets into the main event from this LCQ. Caleb Martin's through, and Tyler Raggio holding off Aiden Brown for that final transfer spot. Raggio, we don't get to see a whole lot of him either, but when he shows up, man, the kid's he's so fun to watch. Just a picturesque style. I think we've talked about it before. Just when the bike's sideways, speed up. I mean, it is great to watch Tyler Raggio on a bike, and cool to see him back out there competing on the weekend. So he locks into the main event. Onto the dash, the big Mike Turner challenge. Turner Racing putting up some money for the singles riders on the dash for cash for the day. It looked like the Huskies might finally end the Tom Drain dominance tour there in Springfield. Coast takes the lead on the last lap. Tadman tries to get around the outside and put himself in front of Drain as well, but slips a little wide, and then Drain swings up the inside and gets past Coast at the line by just 8/1000ths of a second to bring up a little extra cash. You just ain't stopping Tom on this mile. Main event time rolls around, the final singles main event here at Springfield, and we had tight quarters racing. There was a lot of reaching out like, hey, man, I'm here. It happened with Ruth Evans and Jared Lowe early on, happened with Coast and Tadman. The first impressions, guys, communicated with each other. Nonverbals, you do what you got to do to kind of work with your teammate there. They were, again, working that second line, rolling around the outside in the corners. That higher entry into the corners, that second lane seemed to be the way to go rather than just kind of burning it in underneath and trying to hug the guardrail. Additionally, close encounter with Braden Fanders and Jared Lowe that saw Fanders get up into the wall, and at the same time, Terrence Santero's bike lets go and forces him into a DNF, which would impact him in the points, as we'll see when we get to that here in a little bit. Tom Drain would try a couple of different lines throughout this main event that weren't exactly working great for him. He fell back to about 6th or 8th, but with 11 riders up front in this lead pack and with the ability of Tom, he could have just been trying to, see what that bike had, see what he could do, put himself in a hole and just see if he could dig out of it. An awesome ride for Ryder Reese to be up in front of this group, and Tyler Raggio from barely making the show to fighting for the win. Super cool for him. Late in the race, another moment with Fanders and Tadman. They get really close going into 1 and 2. Tadman gets run a little bit wide there, but neither of them were impacted super heavily. They didn't lose the lead draft. They were still up in this front group, and Drain leading over Bruder and Coast as we take the white flag, and Bruner goes into turn 3 with the lead. But coming off of turn 4, once again, Tom Drain pulls out of the draft, gets by Bruner at the line. Chad Coast comes from 3rd ahead of Cage Tadman. And Tyler Raggio starts 16th and gets 5th. This top group, this top 10 at the end of the race was covered by just half a second. And there was less than a tenth between 1st and 3rd. Super cool aerial shot from the drone showing just how close everybody was at the line. And for Tom, it's his 7th win on the year. He sweeps Springfield for the 2nd year in a row. That 7th win, he can now tie Cody Kopp and Dallas Daniels' accomplishment of getting 8 in a single season if he's able to win at Ozark, a track that he won at last year. And Tom Drain is a better closer than Mariano Rivera. Last year, he won 4 of the final 5 rounds to collect that 2nd place effort in his championship run last year. This year, he's done more than just close well. He's almost been the middle reliever that's thrown a no-hitter since coming in. From June to the end of this year, Tom Drain has finished 1st or 2nd in every single round over the last 10 races that we've had. So that accomplishment and just like his average finish at the end of this year is potentially the best ever in the singles class. We'll have to do some math later on to see what that looks like. But man, 18 singles victories. He's only a few behind Cody Cobb if he decides to come back for another year to chase that record. But man, Tom is just the man at Springfield. He's had 5 starts. He's only finished outside of first. He's only had that one runner-up finish there at Springfield in all his time there. And Tom is just he's so locked in. He's so professional on race day that you don't oftentimes get to see on TV, at least, sort of the how much this hits him in his heart of hearts. And it was cool to see how much this weekend and this championship meant to Drain, who's, again, his season's not over. He can get that 8th victory and really put that final stamp on the season before he, decides where to navigate next year. But, man, stock's high. Should he just go ahead and bump up to the Twins class next year? I have like a wishful thinking thing I want to get into with the Twins class later on in a future episode. With the points, it's kind of locked up front. We've got some battles further in the field. Drain, he's the champ. Behind him, Trevor Bruner's able to get comfortably into second spot, barring a DNF and no points that Lake Ozark going to chase Sadoff victory. Bruner's going to finish second. Sadoff's going to finish third. But behind them, Cage Chapman takes over fourth by just 3 points over Terrence Santero after Santero's difficulties there in Springfield. Braden Fanders, Aiden Roos-Evans, Jared Lowe, Chad Coase, and Evan Renshaw bring up the top 10. And for Coase, he's had 3 top 5s in his last 5 starts dating back to Sturgis Triple Challenge race. And that's really good to see for them after they struggled so mightily earlier in the year. That was an effort that we thought could be a title contender, and it just didn't come to fruition. But Chad on a very good run of results here toward the end of the season and looking to finish strong for them. Additionally, Roos-Evans, he was a victim of something in the Sturgis TT because his points all went away. So that has impacted him in the standings as well. And the podium got taken away from him at Sturgis TT. So Braden Fanders elevated to a podium there in Sturgis. And I guess every year we're going to have something happen at the Sturgis TT where somebody gets their points taken away. So that might be a fun prop bet for 2026. Looking for more details out about that when it becomes available. I'll have to try to look into that on the tech logs or bulletins or whatever. Before all the mile racing happened, we had the Springfield Short Track with Mies Promotions and Corey Texter Racing Promotions putting that event on, coming together, and great to see them be able to pull this off and have that Springfield Short Track. It's a facility that has seen great amateur racing, has had Steve Nace Racing, has had nationals through the years, and man, who can forget? Like that first memory I have of that was Nicky Hayden versus Will Davis and the epic battle they had in 2000, the day before Will won his only Springfield Mile in that Hall of Fame race. Additionally, we saw Brian Bigelow with an epic, I think the first win of his career came there, and so many just crazy encounters that have taken place there at that short track. If I'm not mistaken, it was also the site of Trevor Bruner's first victory in recent years, and it's a track that I hope we get to continue to see as part of the prelude to the mile weekend. I would love to see more pro riders support this event, but I do understand that trying to set your bike up for a tiny track like that and then flip it for a mile the very next day might not be the most enticing effort. But Corey and his team did a great job with that event. It seems a lot of riders supported it at the amateur level, and we had some really, really good guys in the house. In the Pro-Am class, it was Davis Fisher taking the victory over Bronson Bauman and Sam Drain. And so amidst all of Davis's struggles on the mile, he did at least get the short track victory under his belt for the weekend. And then, man, Sam Drain, what a year he has had. This Pro-Am race at Springfield Short Track was the only time a rider named Drain would be defeated other than Tom's SuperTwins DNF. The Drain family and the whole essence and effort had quite the weekend there in Springfield. Sam able to pick up victories in the 450 amateur and open amateur class at the Springfield Short Track ahead of Jack Brooks, and Jack coming back from his injury that he sustained at amateur nationals. Great seeing Jack back out there racing, and hopefully we get to see him down in Mid-Carolina in a couple of weeks, as he's still got that open amateur championship for the Mission Food CTR Flat Track Series that he's in the points lead for, and could wrap that up down there in Nessus. He won a race down there back at the Slammer Time Promotions event to kick off the Southeast Flat Track season earlier this year. So we'll see, hopefully see Jack down there. Behind him, James Arnaz on Dallas Daniels' practice bike, picked up a third place finish in the 450 amateur class, and Caden Cox was third in the open amateur class. And I would really like to see James get a prove-it deal with Essenson for next year on a singles class. Move, at this point, maybe move, regardless of where Tom is, let James get a shot on those 450s with Essenson. And I think James is a rider that could be very, very solid and kind of fly under the radar and have a really strong year in the singles class. He's very smooth, a really good rider out of California. We've had the pleasure of getting to talk with him at the racetrack and do an interview with him last year. And just a really impressive guy, good family. And I feel like that could be a good pairing if he gets a shot there. But then again, I'm not the one footing the bill for all this. It's wishful thinking. Again, I have several things for wishful thinking I'll get into over the offseason. Unsettled Racing had a really strong showing there at the short track. Braxton Reagan picks up a victory in the 250 amateur class over Jackson Settle. And then Wesley Settle wins the 85cc and Super Mini class. And speaking of Unsettled Racing and Greg Settle, they made a big donation to Back on Track. And it's amazing to see that sort of support from that group and helping out injured riders. So to Unsettled Racing, thank you so much for your involvement in the sport and your contributions in helping out the riders who are impacted by injuries at our racing. And just it's so good to have those groups involved and helping at the amateur ranks. Wesley and Jackson are incredibly talented riders, and Braxton is right there in the hunt for a Mission Food CTR Flat Track Series 250 championship, and as a kid who gets to make his 450 AMA debut at Mid-Carolina in September as well. Braxton is somebody to keep an eye on in future years as far as contesting for those Horizon Awards. And a couple of blasts from the past there in Springfield, guys who have been staples in the American Flat Track ranks over the years, especially in that region. Rob Pearson wins the Astro Cup, gets the victory over Ronnie Jones and Garth Brow, and then AFT singles superstar back in the 2010s, Kyle Johnson is victorious in the 30-plus class, and then in the GNHC hooligan class, Jeremy DeRuyter is victorious over Caden Cox and Sean Raggio, and those three pretty much throw a blanket over them, just 0.3 of a second, separating them at the finish line in that hooligan class there at the Springfield Short Track. In the vet classes, Richard Kent got the better of Paul Malone in the 40-plus class, but Paul would win the 50-plus class on the night. Cruz Texter wins the 50cc chain and 65cc class, while William Cato wins the 50cc air-cooled class there at the Springfield Short Track. And those two names are ones we've said quite a bit on our Mission Food CTR Flat Track Series recaps here on the Flat Track Flashback YouTube channel. A huge thank you to Corey and Jared for putting the Springfield Short Track on and keeping it as part of the Labor Day weekend festivities there. Loved that they honored the winners on the podium for opening ceremonies at the mile. Cool for those amateur riders to get a shot at that. And I don't know what Corey's plans are going forward with his series at all, but it would be kind of sick if the Mission Food CTR Flat Track Series finale was at the Springfield Short Track the day before the Springfield Miles, and then you got to honor your champions of that series as part, again, of opening ceremonies. But if it stays as a standalone event, it was still cool to see those guys honored at the mile the next day as part of opening ceremonies. Really cool to just highlight the future of this sport. That it's great to see Jared and Corey really investing in and trying to keep this thing going. You know, we need the investment at all levels, and these amateur riders need something to aspire to. Otherwise, they'll just all go play golf. Outside of the U.S., I'm going to touch on FIM Flat Track and Speedway Grand Prix. I'm a little delayed on the FIM Flat Track recap. That event took place in Stiesel, Germany on August 23rd, and it was a sick-looking racetrack. A little bit bigger than what we've seen throughout the year, very loose, and these guys are just a lot of fun to watch on these tracks. The straightaway seemed a little bit narrow here, but the corners seemed to be wide enough, and Sammy Halbert put on a clinic out there. Perfect through his heat races, won every single time. Kevin Corradetti looked like he might be able to pull a perfect score, but Halbert got the better of him in heat 11. Corradetti was second in heat race points coming into the final, and Tim Neve, who was collected when that big crash with Halbert back at round 3, he comes in third in heat race points. Strong ride from Tim Neve, and good to see him back at the racetrack. Points leader for the FIM Flat Track Series, Irvin Krajcevic, had a rough day. 6th in heat race points, not really a factor in the main event either. In this main event, a start for Halbert. He was stuck behind the Argentinian Santiago Arangio, and Santiago was looking really sporty. He was putting on a show during this race. Now, Halbert would get by Arangio going into turn 1 on the second lap, and Halbert would just say bye-bye and check out. He'd go on to win the race, and Halbert's got 2 fifths and 2 wins on the season. Behind Halbert, though, Kevin Corradetti, Santiago Arangio, and Tim Neve duking it out for second place. Corradetti with a very brave move, splitting them, going 3 wide coming out of 2 about midway through the race, was able to secure second place on the day. Strong run from Corradetti, and it helped him out in points as well. Urban Krajcevic finished in 6th, and that allows Halbert to really shrink this gap. Halbert now only 2 points back of Krajcevic with 2 races left. Andre Svejic, who had a pretty meh day as well there in Germany, he's still in the hunt, 7 points back. And then Daniela Tonelli will sit 4th, and Kevin Corradetti launches past Gerard Bayo into 5th in points after that strong run there in Germany. With the 2 races remaining, September 13th at Vasad in Hungary, and Pardubice in the Czech Republic on September 20th. Back-to-back weekends over there, so Sammy doesn't have to fly back and forth. You can just hang out over there in Europe for a couple of days to try to bring home his second FIM Flat Track Championship. Speedway GP, I love it. This year, so much fun. And this race here in Wrocław, Poland, we had a sprint race factored in as well, and it would be vital for Bartosz Zmarzlik in the championship. Now, Zmarzlik would not win the sprint race, but he would qualify for it, as opposed to Brady Kurtz, who missed out. In the sprint, it would be a British 1-2 with Dan Bewley getting the better of Robert Lambert, and Zmarzlik comes home 3rd, picking up 2 vital championship points. He came into the day ahead by 3. By the end of the sprint, heading into the night program, he led the championship by 5, and Zmarzlik was flawless through heat racing there in Poland, winning every single one of his heat races, a perfect score, 15 points through the heats going into the final. But Brady Kurtz, he had 13 points coming into the final, and he locked in as well. Now, Bewley, after winning the sprint race, barely locked into a last chance race. He had to have a really strong ride in his final heat race just to make the LCS, but he would take advantage of that opportunity, winning his last chance qualifier and locking into the final as well. And Bewley and Jack Holder both barely got into these last chance events on heat race points, but were able to make the most of that opportunity and join Zmarzlik and Kurtz in the final. And this final was insane. So exciting to watch. These races are all, bang, bang, bang. 4 laps, 4 riders, lift the tape and send it. For those of you who don't know, these Speedway bikes, no brakes, so just steer it with your ass and the throttle. Off the line, Zmarzlik was on the outside, Kurtz on the inside. Zmarzlik trying to get the jump, but he and Holder kind of come together, pushes Zmarzlik a little wide. Bewley from that second gate goes kind of sliding through the middle, gets to the cushion, and starts chasing down Kurtz, who was catfishing the bottom to start turn 1 and 2 before trying to move to the top. Bewley and Zmarzlik catch that cushion on the high line and start running him down. A mistake there by Kurtz coming out of turn 2. He's lifting the front end on the second lap, but he's able to hold the lead. And then Zmarzlik and Bewley start dicing back and forth for second. Kurtz riding a defensive line, holding them off. Coming into the final lap, though, Zmarzlik's able to poke a nose, gets underneath Bewley, gets up alongside Kurtz, who's able to chop him a little bit, kill his momentum going into 3 and 4. And Brady Kurtz holds on for the victory, his 4th in a row, and he's only the 2nd rider in Speedway Grand Prix history to do that, joining Tony Rickardsson as the only riders to win 4 Speedway Grand Prix Championship finals in a row. And Kurtz, with that victory, he gets back those 2 points that he lost in the sprint race. He now still trails Zmarzlik by 3, so they kind of hold serve heading into the final round on September 13th. The rookie Kurtz and the GOAT Zmarzlik locked in an epic fight, and I hope this is something that we get to see for years to come, because these two have just put on a show all year long and have been so much fun to watch. And if Kurtz can pull off that feat on the final round of the season, he could potentially set a record for most Grand Prix victories in a row without winning the championship if they push on points again. So we'll have to see how that all unravels. Dan Bewley's 3rd place effort jumps him to 3rd in points after Freddie Lindgren had a less than stellar day. So Bewley takes over 3rd from Lindgren in GP points, and Jack Holder holds on to 5th there in the top 5. 1 round to go. There's so much happening September 13th. We got another FIM race, Speedway Grand Prix, the AFT finale. So much happening there on the 13th, man. We thought there was a lot happening in Springfield. Man, I'm still talking. This is a long episode. So why don't we call it there? Why don't we wrap this bad boy up? Thank you guys so much for checking us out. I would love to get your thoughts, opinions on what went down in Springfield. I'm just a dumb fan. You can tell me I'm wrong and I'm an idiot. Just light me up in the comments if you want. Or if you agree with it, hey, I want to hear some perspectives. Thank you guys so much for giving this channel a chance. I appreciate everybody checking us out. Please support those podcasts and YouTube channels and anybody that's bringing content around the sport. I can't wait to hear Corey's thoughts on this past weekend, as the black flag definitely hits close to home for him. Scotty Dubler was there all weekend, and he also attended the Rotors race. I'm sure he's got a lot to talk about. Can't wait to listen to their stuff. Appointment viewing for me, whether I'm part of the shows or just getting to listen in. Anything that these guys are talking about flat track related, I'd love to hear about it. So please support them. If you want to get a hold of us, on Instagram or via email. We'll throw that stuff down below like we usually do. Upcoming events, we got Battle at the Border, Match Point, the third installment of this event. We've had a Canadian winner, and Trent Lowe won the event last year, our Springfield Mile winner. So Welland, Ontario for Doug Lawrence's race on September 6th. Coming up September 19th and 20th, the Mission Food CTR Flat Track Series finale at Mid-Carolina Speedway in Easton, South Carolina. I get to go back to the racetrack finally. Can't wait for that. I'm so excited for that weekend. If you guys can't attend, make sure you're dialed up on Fans Choice to catch all the action there. If that's a little bit too much of a travel for you and you're looking for another race that weekend, Brad Baker is helping out Bolt Strong Promotions, putting on the Croswell Half Mile up there in Michigan on September 20th. So a lot of cool stuff coming up, and one more American Flat Track race to go. It just seems like yesterday that we were in Daytona kicking off the short track, and now we're coming into the season finale. But at the same time, man, I'm tired. It's been a season. So we'll see how it all unfolds. Congratulations to Estenson Racing on your championship with Tom Drain. Congratulations to Tom on making history. Dallas, way to bounce back in that Triple Challenge show and take that victory. And Trent Lowe and the Honda boys, let's freaking go. Congratulations, you guys, on getting that Honda on top of the box. And you got something special cooking over there. Hey, 2026, watch out, Harley. Watch out, Yamaha. Honda's looking like they might be back, baby. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Love you.